other sectors where it may be more interesting to do this compact approach.
So 2 points on this, on your comments, Rebecca. First, that I think like if we take a GRI point of view, this move towards these compact sector standards is recognizing that at the moment, the appetite for more and more reporting is limited. So the sector standards in particular have not only the topic standards, but all the additional sector reporting. So we're basically saying, let's start with the topic standards, and then we can maybe see at a later point if there's still more appetite of basically people saying, look, this is great, but actually for my sector, I want to have more precise disclosures on how I can move that. And on the second point, is could be a good, what you were mentioning, perhaps a mix of sectors in the cluster that could help us to evaluate that, but we were trying to put the clusters in a way that we can have economies of scale, no? That we have similar impacts, or that they are somehow similar so that the work is easier. But that could be a consideration for the clusters as well, and for the pilots perhaps, so we'll take that point and reflect on it.
Hi, Tomo speaking, and but thank you so much for making this mock-up, and we get a more clear idea about what the compact standard looks like. And but I think it's basically identify likely material topics, plus some explanation about this. I wonder, like this level of information, then we can do within several months, and we can do list up on all the likely material topics and for remaining 30-some sectors. Then probably consultation we can go more ongoing way and through online using. And first we kind of showing this list of topic. Then maybe some companies start using it. That's why we are doing the consultation online instead of kind of phase by phase and each phase taking 1.5 years and then finishing and eventually still taking 10 years, which we don't need to wait that long, I thought.
Dong, did you have a question before I come back in?
You come first. Okay. So if we were to approve this proposal, and we haven't got to that point yet, it then has to go to the supervisory board for consideration as a project proposal. If we send it to the supervisory board, we need to make a case for doing it. And so if we can include any information we have on market demand for sector standards, that would be good. And I'm wondering, these take less time from start to finish, but also during that time, I would have thought they take less resources and therefore we can do more of them at the same time. Is that a correct assumption?
Yes, a clarification, Basin, that the feedback, that what we're looking from the GRI governance bodies is feedback on the project, not approval, right? No, yes. So we will gather any of the recommendations they may have. So it is continuous. You continue to have the oversight and the decision on the scope of the project. And yes, I mean, the idea is that we will be then bringing more of these compact standards to the sector with less time compared to a fully fledged sector standard. And I think it would be important to mention that if we have a funder that for a particular reason is interested in a fully fledged sector standard, that we will nevertheless be able to do so if it's fully then financed.
Thank you. So, sorry, I'll just continue with this question. So if we do approve it in a moment, and we make this case to the supervisory board when we're seeking their feedback, noting that they don't need to approve it, one of the points to make then is that we are collaborating with the ISSB on sector standards, and this fits in very neatly with the work that we're doing on the global reporting system in terms of the complementarity between the two sets of sector standards? Sorry.
Thanks very much. So just a question from me, because I noticed obviously it's just a mock-up in terms of the example, but what was the thinking to only include employment as the referenced relevant topic standards? Was there a deliberate decision not to go with the labour standards that like we're currently going through the review process with? Because obviously freedom of association, the right to collective bargaining was part of, for example, the financial services one. And, you know, something like forced labour, again, is often highly relevant for some of the potential impacts of, you know, the construction sector. So it was just to understand what your thinking was on that.
Yes, and so the thinking was based on the current standard that we have now, but also we also had a conversation about, do we do the likely material topics one-to-one to the topic standards, or do we actually then bundle together where you have topics like labor rights and then put other topics and then employment? But as I said, so we didn't go through a PCP, so there were no, that is also why it is important, to your point, of why we cannot just do this research internally and that's it. I think it's important to test it in the market, to receive the views and ensure. I think that following those steps is what gives the work of GRI credibility, because you know that it has been tested with different stakeholders and has followed due process.
Yes, this is Yan. So I do like the approach, and so I only have one question. I remember that we talked about whether we only include the GRI topics. I mean, but I think when I first reading the sector standards, I think one of the valuable things is really to have some extra sector-specific topics. I'm not asking you to add it to the compact project now, but at least I think during the consultation phase or during the trial mock-up phase, at least adding a question on what you think will be relevant for the sector at the sector-specific topics, which could be next phase to have a more, I don't know, advanced compact standard or something like that. I think it will be more also persuadable. This is kind of a collecting information phase for the next more mature sector standards as well.
Yes, so we would include, if there's a topic where there's a relevant impact for a sector that is not part of one of those that have been developed, it will be included, and they will need to demonstrate how they comply with 3.3, so how they manage the impact. And then it would be then brought to the attention of the topic team for when they develop the list of topics to be revised, that is fully developed in the future.
Actually, Andrea, Helga, thank you for this. Just a quick question. What kind of time or resource savings are we thinking of here between the compact standard and the full-fledged standard?
So a fully fledged sector standard takes around between 30 and 33 months. Developing one set of clusters is around 17 to 18 months for a cluster.
But within that time, there's less resources. So it's not just the shortening of the time, there's less resources. Have I understood that correctly?
So no, maybe even if the resources are the same, you have a shorter period and more products going to the market. So there are savings in that sense. We will need, for example, 3.5 full-time equivalents between the research team and the sector team to develop this. Currently now, without considering communications or technical team, we need between, depending on if it's a portfolio project or not, you need at least 2 people to develop a fully fledged sector standard in the sector team only.
Have we costed the cost of producing a compact sector standard versus a full sector standard? Have we done that costing?
We did that as part of an assessment of the timelines and an assessment of, and these are the figures that I'm mentioning, between 33 months versus 18 months and 3.5 equivalent versus 2.5 equivalent.
So let me put that another way. If we went out to market to say, no, we won't be doing that, of course, GRI will be doing it, but if we went to get funding for a compact sector standard, would we know how much to ask for for the complete development of a contact, we would?
Yes.
Excellent. So that's my sort of question on the comparison of the cost of producing a compact one versus a full one. Because that gives us an idea of the resource implications of producing them.
But also, we will developing a cluster, no? So you will have 4 to 6, depending on how many sectors you have in what cluster. So it would not be 1-to-1, no? You will have, but we can share those figures if you like as well.
But you also can do 2 clusters for the time during the time of one.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Do we move on to the approval slide? Is that where we go next?
Yeah.
So the question is, do we approve the draft project proposal in item 11 on the GRI sector standard project for compact sector resources, for compact sector standards?
No.
Any dissents?
Rebecca, I dissent.
Okay.
I don't think it's the best use of our existing resources for the reasons explained earlier.
Okay, thank you. Any other dissents?
Subject to further consideration of more compacting the process.
Okay. Okay, so can I see the hands of those who approve it then in that case? Okay, thank you. That is carried, I think, with two dissenting. Thank you very much for that work.
Yes.
Bastian?
Can I just record the action then that we will, before we send it to the governance bodies, that we will try to write up a bit more of the rationale in a concise cover letter, also in terms of the resource implication and all of that. Yeah.
I think it would be really interesting to them to include the cost of producing one compact standard versus one full sector
But also
standard.
explaining lifting out some of what is in the paper in terms of the gap that we're trying to address, and also the reflections on the sector standards work at large after the pilot, that evaluation that led us to this proposal. And the second action, I would want to follow up on the dissenting views also, just to understand better, because I think there's an element of timing, right? And we can maybe do more explanation of that, and the element also of, if I understand Rebecca correctly, it was also about which sectors we focus on, because that might also be something we're addressing, I think, in the way we stage this process. Yep.
That would be good of you to do that. Thank you. Shalendra,
Just
last
one
point.
last point on that. You might have to just look at a time, right? When you're doing the costing, it can't be on a per, because you have a much shorter time. So, say over a year or 2 years or whatever. So you might have to look at a timeline, a cash flow, as opposed to.
I think what we need to do is we need to compare what we currently invest in one sector standard, fully fledged, to what we can produce with the same resource through the new process. I think that's probably the comparator.
Before giving the floor to Miguel, we just wanted to share a bit of the rationale on the names and receive your guidance if you would like to. So we have positioned in the beginning this as interim sector resources, because we see this as a preliminary step to a fully fledged sector standard. And then resources, at some point, you may remember, we were considering if this was guidance or not, a research paper or not. So with your feedback, we then landed in, it has to be at the same level of a sector standard, so that people use it as well. We don't want to use the word interim. So we moved away from the use of the word interim and the use of resources. We discuss it as reduced sector standards, but it has negative connotations when you think about a reduced sector standard. So we're trying to find a name that conveys, that doesn't have negative implications, not on this work, not on the sector standards that are already published or under development. We consider a couple of names. You see some examples there, and we landed on these compact sector standards. So we wanted to have a sense of if you feel this word, also testing different geographies and different points of view, if you think this word conveys correctly this work, and if you have any other suggestions.
Thanks very much. I suppose I'm just reflecting on this. I think what we agreed at the last meeting is that everyone was clear that we wanted to avoid a kind of GRI light sector standard. So I think nobody's kind of advocating that. I suppose I like the clarity of the interim version because it does indicate that it's planned to move forward. And so I suppose I'd understand a little bit more about why you decided not to go for interim, because to me that then shows that it's very clear GRI isn't saying, oh, you can do this instead. It's saying, you know, this is going to help you where you are now, but we're looking forward. And I see that then a bit of a drawback with the other three alternatives, because there's a danger they could be interpreted in a bit of a GRI light way. So.
And a point on the interim is also that we didn't want people to not use it. So if they say, okay, if there's an interim, maybe there's something else that is coming, I'd rather wait before I change systems, before I embrace this new model, wait. And for some sectors, it may be that we only develop these interim sector resources.
It's also possible that we might, the GSSB might at some time in the future decide that for some sectors, the compact standard is enough and not move or delay moving to what we're referring to here as a full standard. I think.
Thank you, Helga. I actually think compact is the strongest based on what we've discussed. I had the same understanding as you, Helga, about interim. I think it sort of might give the implication, and we're talking even for sectors where we do come back and make one, it may be 5 years plus, right? So I think something like compact is the right move there. And I wouldn't want abridged. I think as a user, if I saw that I was looking at the abridged version, I'd say, oh, okay, great, but I need the unabridged version because I want all the details. So I would immediately try and find the non-abridged version. So I think I would support compact. Thank you.
Anna here. Concise could be another option. And I think it would be interesting to see how the reporting practices differ based on this compact version versus the full-blown standard, because I think we still would expect the reporters to go through all of the disclosures within a topic standard, decide what they need to report on, and perhaps at some point we could decide that this compact version is enough for some sectors, but what additional value we get from a complete standard version would be quite in practice eventually.
As Carol was saying that now I'm just bringing up the question again, are we sure that we're going to develop permanent sector standards after all of this, or it's kind of a chosen process? What is the procedure afterwards? So the compact, the full, whether we're going to have some kind of mechanisms?
I don't think we know that now. I mean, the point about the feedback on the approach while we're now building it, but also after we've developed the first cluster, is probably going to inform this. I think from staff side, what Helga said about at this moment in time, there is limited appetite for additional levels of granularity and disclosure, but at the same time, GI sees the gap in the market. We have lots of conversations about the complexity of double materiality assessment, that you have to start with very many subjects. There are no assortative reference. So there is clearly a gap that exists. And once you fill that in and you connect it to the GI standards, you already have organizations coming into the system. And you always have the option to extend out. But whether we do that or not, that could be also a function of for particular sectors, right, where you want to go deeper. That could also be the case.
Yeah.
But it is. I think the other consideration is really: is it better right now to have broad coverage of many sectors to give an entry point to the GI system and helping with the double materiality considerations, or do we face it? In any case, there will always be the resource question in the background as well, because if you get 5 for 1, then that will also be an organizing principle.
I think that is always okay. We just need to have a kind of action point at the later time that we need to decide what is the procedures going forward. Yeah.
Just I want to point out, like compact, I don't know the English speaker, it's interpret differently, but for us, it's compact sounds very much GRI-like type of, wording. And I wonder like a beta or something better.
Look, at this current point in time, it might actually sound quite attractive to reporters.
Yes.
And I don't necessarily see it as a sort of a light version. I think it's about communicating what it is, would be my view. Everyone's entitled to their view, of course. But where are we? We've approved this proposal already, haven't we? So these are the options that have been considered. Are you making a recommendation? Do you want us to make a decision on? Okay. And you've got what you needed. Okay, thank you. So let's move on quickly now, because we have our guests from the IFRIS Foundation joining us shortly for a private session.
Hello?
Oh, hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. I know we have little time, and I'm sorry for not being with you in Leiden, but I will only present 2 slides. I'm Miguel Perez, the research lead at the Standards team, and I'm here to present item 13, the GRI sector list update. This is item 13 on your documentation, which is also for approval. Just a bit of background on these. You may or may not remember, of course, at the inception of the sector program, GRI developed a list of 40 sectors, basically a classification of organizations that should cover the whole economy. So we will group together in these sectors organizations with similar impacts. So then the sector standards would have some coherence. This was the origin of it. The sector list was and still is provisional. It's provisional in two senses. The one is that the final naming and the scope of a specific sector is only determined when we start developing a sector standard, being a sector standard or a compact version, as we have just discussed, and also in the sense that the sector list of these 40 sectors is not considered closed. I mean, we could always add more sectors to it. But still, even if it's a provisional list, it's always good to publish the full list for 2 reasons. One, it gives a good signal to the stakeholders saying, okay, I don't have a sector standard now, but it's coming. And also it prevents major gaps and overlaps in the classification. Now, at this time, we are submitting to you an update of the sector list. We thought it was a good time to coincide with this new impulse in the sector program that Helga has just presented. A few years have passed since the last update, and we have not only developed a few sector standards, but we also got feedback from GSSB and other stakeholders. So we needed to update the list to improve clarity and consistency, to address the specific feedback, and also to align with other classifications when possible. In the next slide, you'll see the full list of 40 sector standards. The changes are not major. Marked in an asterisk are all the sectors that have suffered some change. Some of them are just a naming change. Others could be a change of a scope. And I will not explain them. Of course, we won't have time for that. You can read it in the item 13. And of course, I'm here to answer any questions that you may have. Carol, that's back to you before the approval.
Thank you, Miguel. Are there any questions? Bearing in mind we're short of time. Okay, Rebecca.
Hi, Rebecca. I have a question. Well, first of all, it's a tremendous amount of work, so thank you. And what is the plan that we have for announcing this in a way that facilitates reporters' work?
For announcing the sector list, we don't have any specific plan, I think, but we can think of any of. I mean, listen to any proposal. This is public, of course, like every GSSB document, but we have not made in the past an effort to make a standalone communication material of this list. But I take note of your point that it's actually good for stakeholders to know that this list is here.
Yeah, just maybe in addition, I think in context of the earlier discussion on the compact sector standards, we can actually use this list to socialize the idea of clusters, and also coming back to, because when we last communicated this list, we were saying we're going through priority groups and one by one. And we were met by market response, well, this will take the better part of 30 years or so to go through this. Now we're having the discussion on the compact sector standards, and then this is an opportunity to go back and show what Miguel was mentioning, that we will now be faster in moving through the sectors and having actually a corresponding piece or entry point to the GRI system for a specific sector. So that could be the opportunity when we start to communicate about the change in approach to sectors and the next projects on that. We could combine that with this list.
Quick question on the source of this, Miguel. Is it based in some existing taxonomy, or is that produced solely by GRI based on, I don't know, other existing definitions?
It's a combination. I mean, we base ourselves in many existing classifications, but we have made, let's say, autonomous decisions. So we cannot say that we have picked an off-the-shelf classification. It's basically in practice a GRI own classification.
In terms of completeness, do you feel like you've captured the entire sort of global economy with these groups?
Yes, with the possible exception of the public sector, which if you remember, the GSSB members remember, we discussed the possibility of adding to the sector standards one or more sectors that will cover the public administration. And that is not covered here, but as I mentioned before, the list is not closed, so this list does not preclude that the GSSB may in the future decide to add some more sectors to it. But beyond the public administration, we do feel that this covers the totality.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Miguel and colleagues on the GSSB. Can we approve this sector list update?
Yes.
Yes, any dissent? No? Okay, that is a unanimous decision then to approve that. Thank you very much. Is there any other business for the public session today? Okay, we will close the public session today and invite in our colleagues to talk about the work of the ISCP.
Recording
Thank
stopped.
you.